Story 1. It is unfortunate how some individuals feel the need to belittle others to feel better about themselves. True confidence comes from uplifting others, not diminishing them. Story 2. Being judgmental about where other people shop can be harmful. I had someone tell me I shouldn't admit to shopping at Dollar General because it's low quality. Story 3. A common behavior on Reddit occurs when someone asks a question and others misinterpret it to respond condescendingly. For example, "My car won't start. What should I do?" You start a car by putting the key in the ignition and turning it. On some newer cars, you can just push a button. I can't believe there are people who don't know this. Story 4. Large brand logos on items some individuals wear or carry. Affluent individuals who are not celebrities seeking attention typically wear custom-made clothing that is perfectly fitted and lacks any brand markings. Story 5. Anti-science individuals such as flat earth proponents, critics of the pharmaceutical industry, and vaccine skeptics are not enlightened. They are simply ignorant and uninformed. Story 6. Someone offers help in most situations but with an attitude, expressing a demeanor of, "I am happy to help you, as I cannot help but feel pity for your inability." Story 7. People who use unnecessarily long words to sound smarter when speaking or asking a question can be frustrating. I have a colleague who enjoys trying to challenge others, even though they are experts in their fields, especially since he is not an expert in anything. Story 8. Telling colleagues you are essentially a manager when you are not a manager. You know the type, we have all encountered one in the workplace. Story 9. The man in the gym takes off his shirt when doing bicep curls and keeps flexing in front of the mirror between sets, putting his shirt back on afterward. Story 10. Buying someone else's high-ranking profile in a game and then pretending that you are the one who achieved those feats, despite clearly showing through gameplay that you have no idea how to play the game. Story 11. Upping everything and everyone. Additionally, comparing situations you've experienced to those others discuss, even if they are dissimilar. Story 12. Sending thousands of emails demanding that people list 5 things they accomplished last week or else they will be terminated, while the ones sending the emails are not even in charge but are involved in an inappropriate relationship with the supervisor. Story 13. Almost any country club behavior centers around the desire to feel superior. Story 14. Narcissism is evident in the desire to post multiple times on a Reddit thread with our own opinions, while neglecting to take the time to read the beautiful things others share. Story 15. Obsessing over minute details in conversation for some kind of unusual intellectual competition, as if to prove superiority. It suggests that their perspective is sufficiently intelligent to reveal something people do not already know. Unbeknownst to them, it was overlooked due to its irrelevance. Story 16. Trying to control others often stems from feelings of inadequacy, fear, and insecurity. For example, a secure person allows others to simply exist, provided they are not causing harm. Story 17. Bragging about your phone brand is unnecessary. A truly wealthy person wouldn't even notice the additional $200 spent on a different phone. Story 18. Using complex or obscure words in casual conversation, especially when the recipient is unlikely to understand, undermines effective communication. Language is a tool we use to convey our thoughts and create understanding in another person's mind. When we use words that the recipient cannot define, it defeats the purpose of language and becomes a pointless display of intellect and knowledge. Story 19. Wearing a Trump or Make America Great Again sticker on your car makes you look like an attention-seeking teenager. Go to a store to annoy your mom. Story 20. Firing tens of thousands of Americans and former veterans because you take pleasure in the suffering of others. Story 21. Vegans often share their dietary choices even when the topic isn't mentioned. No one randomly stands up and declares their meat consumption. Story 22. Voting for Trump, even though every piece of evidence indicates that this is a fundamentally unwise decision. Brainless counterintuitiveness is the most desperate form of seeking superiority. Yes, accept it, those who are unsuccessful still have a job? Story 23. When you have the same car as someone but belittle theirs because it is a lower trim level than yours. For example, 5.0 Mustang owners criticizing EcoBoost Mustang owners, four-wheel drive pickup drivers making fun of someone with a two-wheel drive truck, or Jeep Wrangler owners looking down on non-Wrangler Jeep drivers. Story 24. Acting as though you are the smartest, coolest, and most unique person in the room while attempting to belittle others to elevate your own status. Story 25. Having loud phone conversations in public, talking over others, and generally crossing people's personal boundaries. Story 26. A self-centered individual tries to appear intelligent by using complex vocabulary, but ultimately reveals a lack of common sense. Story 27. At work, they prioritize tasks that involve interacting with higher-level leaders rather than focusing on their own responsibilities. Our department operated independently. As my boss often remarked, "You guys are so independent." This was because he was too busy trying to impress senior leaders instead of supporting us and fulfilling his actual role. They tend to speak negatively about those they perceive as competition or those they consider beneath them. If I criticize anyone, it is usually a senior manager who is underperforming, since they are compensated to do better while neglecting the employees relying on them. My boss, however, frequently disparaged low-level workers in other departments for no apparent reason, seemingly for his own amusement. There is an obsession with appearing talented. I studied very little and still did well in school. My boss would say weekly, even at the age of 33, often reminiscing about his high school days. They enjoy discussing their own properties and those of their families. Story 28. Being domineering to servers is a major red flag and a turnoff for me. How one treats service staff says a lot about their character. Story 29. Buying a car that everyone knows you can't afford is essentially an attempt to impress strangers who do not care. Story 30. Mocking people for the type of media they consume or gatekeeping in general is common on social media platforms. For example, I do not like The Big Bang Theory, but I will not act superior to anyone who enjoys it. Let people enjoy what they like. Story 31. When overhearing someone give you a compliment, a person says, "You always upstage me or make me look bad." Story 32. Turning everything into a conspiracy theory and refusing to acknowledge well-documented events, such as the Holocaust or the moon landings, limits understanding. Not every facet of life contains a hidden truth that only you and a select few are aware of. Story 33. Trying to control people who pay your mortgage because you think you are better than them because you own property that you acquired with the help of your parents or your in-laws. Story 34. They always have to have the right opinion. I have a family member like this. Everyone ends up pretending to agree with her on everything to avoid being lectured and walks on eggshells around her all the time. I'm the only one who calls her out on things and points out how she makes up false facts mid-conversation to be right. I've become her least favorite person now. Story 35. The few behaviors I always notice are taking up space by stretching and putting their arms behind their head or suddenly extending their legs during a conversation. I mostly see men doing this, and it's quite comical. I often think they are like peacocks trying to make themselves appear larger than they are. Women who try to undermine other women. I can only assume you are insecure. Story 36. Making someone angry on purpose involves purposefully misrepresenting their arguments and using logical fallacies. It includes crossing boundaries established by others intentionally. It also entails acting as if you are the only intelligent person in the universe, dismissing anyone who disagrees with you as wrong. Furthermore, it involves holding on to beliefs stubbornly, even when presented with evidence to the contrary, as changing those beliefs would signify a loss of superiority. This reflection is based on a past friendship and the treatment I received from that person. I am glad to have ended that relationship. Story 37. Deep-throating capitalism. We understand that you want to exploit people you believe you deserve better than. Story 38. Treating homeless individuals like they are your friend. Come on, we all know you secretly want to get rid of them like the rest of us. You are just being nice to appear good and feel superior. Am I right, everyone? Story 39. Specifically, what is standing in the way of my ability to be content without conventional markers of accomplishment? Story 40. The one-uppers. Everything is a competition with them, and you can't have a conversation about something you have experienced because they will quickly turn it around to focus on their own experience and how much more significant it is or was. Someone in my life does this every day, and it is both frustrating and exhausting. She wants to feel superior but is, at the same time, the most insecure person I know. Story 41. When someone primarily talks about things they dislike instead of things they like and are passionate about, it reflects a negative mindset. Story 42. People who claim to be intellectuals do so as a means to belittle those they do not deem to be intellectuals. True intellectuals are curious. They ask questions and do not make assumptions. If you see an influencer on social media, such as Jordan Peterson or Andrew Tate, notice that they do not ask questions. They have all the answers, and you just need to listen to them to get your life right. Anytime you hear people say they like someone because they tell it like it is, that person is not an intellectual. They are a pseudo-intellectual charlatan who preys on the lack of direction of others. Story 43. They speak as if they know more, but they really do not. Some individuals have mentioned that they are not published authors, yet they write lengthy paragraphs filled with nonsense. It seems they simply want to hear themselves talk. Story 44. Correcting strangers in public when they don't address you as doctor because you have a PhD is unrealistic. Not everyone is aware of your qualifications. Just focus on your order. Story 45. Everything the girl in the red pants does is a masterclass in arrogance. Story 46. When someone constantly belittles others to feel better about themselves, whether through dismissive comments or an attitude of knowing everything, it reflects an "I'm always right" mentality. They often refuse to take responsibility for their mistakes. Additionally, they boast about their accomplishments in a manner that overshadows others and always seek to be the center of attention in every conversation. Story 47. When people take an opposite stance and insist that they are right, regardless of whether they are actually wrong. Story 48. Examples of grandiose behavior include 1. Boasting. Constantly discussing yourself and your achievements. Criticizing others. Dismissing or belittling the accomplishments of others. Unrealistic beliefs. Holding the belief that you are wealthy, famous, or possess extraordinary skills. Invulnerability. Thinking that you are immune to disease or injury. Self-centeredness. Behaving in a self-referential or arrogant manner. Anger. Reacting aggressively when faced with criticism. Story 49. We work in the same general field, but my work is more important than yours in every way. You do not work as hard as I do, so you have no room to complain about anything. I will not teach you the right way to do anything, knowing you are still relatively new to this, but I will criticize you for every mistake you make. This is directed at you, construction workers. Story 50. Arrogance involves acting as if you are too good for something or someone, as well as someone attempting to surpass your life achievements. Story 51. Gunning your car off the line on a city street, so you are the first person to stop at the next traffic light. What are you doing? The lights are timed to the speed limit. Story 52. I know someone who has been trying to become an influencer as their primary goal in life. Story 53. 1. Sharing how many decades you worked for a particular company when it is irrelevant to the conversation. Discussing the amount of money you spent on items such as clothes, dinner, shoes, or your car. Story 54. Not allowing others to speak during an argument. If an argument does not have two sides, it is a lecture. Story 55. Highlighting someone's shortcomings and discussing how that could never happen to them. Story 56. Forcing tens of thousands of people to return to working in an office for no reason other than to justify the utility bill. Story 57. Someone who frequently interrupts conversations and feels the need to explain how they have done or experienced the same thing, but in a better, more dramatic or impactful way. A colleague at work displays this behavior all the time. He is quite frustrating. I try to show people that I understand what they are going through by sharing a similar story. I always emphasize, I'm not trying to compare situations, but this is how I demonstrate that I can relate and understand your experience. I make it a point to remind myself to say this if I catch myself doing it. However, this colleague is on another level. He constantly interrupts, talks over you, puts words in your mouth, and insists on telling you how he has done or experienced it better or how he helped someone in a meaningful way. Story 58. They are waiting to find your weakness and then constantly make you feel insecure for having them, mostly in public. Story 59. Constantly trying to outdo others. If they achieved something, you achieved it better. If they're unwell, you've handled tougher situations. Story 60. People who want to feel superior often brag about their achievements or possessions. They constantly mention how much better they are or how much more they have, just to make themselves seem above others. It stems from insecurity. They wouldn't behave this way if they felt secure. They also tend to belittle others or ignore their opinions. By putting others down, they elevate their own sense of importance. Another indicator is the constant need for validation, requiring praise to feel good about themselves. Manipulating situations or people is also a common tactic. They create power imbalances to maintain control and uphold their sense of superiority. Story 61. Constantly trying to prove achievements or skills. I had a friend who was like that, always wanting to demonstrate her knowledge and experience. Honestly, to this day, I think she was not being truthful. She never showcased her skills. We shared some, and she always had to say, "Yes, but I studied the field and you didn't." I always thought, okay. And she was always trying to appear important, intimidating, and command respect, showing that she was better than others. The truth is, she had a very sad life, though. Ultimately, she was always seeking validation. Story 62. Bombarding a soon-to-be college graduate as wrong, misinformed, and in need of guidance from someone who inherited their parents' business is inappropriate. Story 63. They judge you by minor things or speak negatively about you. For example, if you prefer to shower at night, they will claim this is wrong or foolish, suggesting instead that you should shower in the morning. Story 64. Not using your name but playing with it. For example, if you are Dan, they might call you Danny Boy. If you are Fred, they might call you Fredo. This behavior is disrespectful, especially if you have just met them. It feels like a total power play. Story 65. My boss talks about how she's a strong, independent woman, how she sent her kids to university, and how she owns multiple rental properties. However, on the flip side, she still owes me a month's worth of pay. I was already charging very little for my time, yet she still claims I am not performing my job correctly, saying her grandkids can do what I do. Additionally, we found a few receipts from a pawn shop, which indicates her finances are poor. 2 years ago, she paid for her kids' apartments, and now they are living with her. It's odd. Story 66. My favorite is watching people who abuse the smallest amount of power. You're an e-bike parking lot security guard. You're a Reddit moderator. Okay, you enjoy that homeowners association presidency. You're a youth sports coach or referee. Relax. I was a hockey referee in Canada. The worst examples of this were other referees I worked with. The second worst were the police officers, but the worst were the rejected police officers. Story 67. Talking about punching Nazis when most people who say that couldn't throw a solid punch if their lives depended on it. Story 68. Reading philosophy can be beneficial. When approached with focus, works like Marcus Aurelius' Meditations can help you think more profoundly and act in a reserved, stoic manner. Those who read Stoicism while acting superior are missing the point entirely. Story 69. Asking this question on Reddit, knowing that it will be filled with smug users making fun of or speaking negatively about people they don't like. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.